Hi, I'm Krista Campbell. Thank you for joining Getting to Know the Utility Network. Before we get started, I would like to encourage you to post your questions. We will have time at the end of the webinar to answer some of them. The questions that we don't get to will be included in our Q&A follow-up that will be posted on GeoNet after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded. You should receive a follow-up email with a link to the recorded webinar. Okay, the webinar today will provide an overview of how the new utility network will support the water industry. Joining me today is David Topman, Water Industry Manager, Mike Miller, Solutions Manager, and Andrew Hargreaves, Solution Engineer. David is going to discuss the history of the geometric network and why we are introducing the new utility network. Mike has been involved with the development of the utility network since its beginning, and he will discuss the data model. Andrew is going to demonstrate how many existing editing workflows can be moved from ArcGIS Desktop to ArcGIS Pro and how utility network rules are used to ensure high quality data creation. So we've received many questions about the utility model, and we're going to try to answer as many as possible. If you haven't submitted your questions yet, please remember to do so during the webinar in the questions dialog box. And as I stated before, if we don't get to your questions, we are going to create a Q&A document that we'll post online. So David's going to get us started. I hope you enjoy the webinar. David?
Yeah, thanks, Krista. So as Krista mentioned, I just wanted to take just a couple of minutes to kind of give the water viewpoint on the utility network and the fact that really it is our, from a network perspective, it's going to be applicable to all things water utilities, but also our water resource side of things with a little bit of a twist, but more on that later. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the water viewpoint, the water perspective on the utility network, and then as Krista said, we're going to go into more of the overview, configuration, what are these asset packages, and then most importantly too, some information on how to join and move on. And I know we've already gotten lots of questions ahead of time, which is awesome. So the utility network, and we don't have sufficient time to go into the history of network development. We kind of definitely back in the day, we use what we call node attribute tables to kind of be able to navigate and understand connectivity and topology. And of course, with the advent of ArcGIS, along came the geometric network, which allowed us to do the tracing from from sources to sinks. Well, this utility network is a whole new thing, and why did we go there? Why have we developed the utility network? Well, definitely it gives us much greater performance. It can scale. That's been some of the challenges that folks are wanting to put into their network, millions and millions of assets of features, and we needed to be able to scale to those folks out there that are wanting to create what we call digital twins, right? They want to be able to have a synthetic model of real life, and that requires much more complex modeling of those features, which the utility network will be doing, and again, kind of that performance and scalability, and be cross-platform. Also, folks have been looking for kind of just a straw dog, if you will, these industry models to something a little more prescriptive so they can get started right away, and that's what you'll see with the utility network as well. Really a starting block, and it's that data model that we can leverage that allows us to kind of make sure it works cross-platform. So you're definitely going to see for the water utility and water resource side, on water utility even, we are starting with water. So those folks that are dealing with potable water systems, kind of that's our first model out the gate, and then we will evolve as we start rolling things out, and again in the future, water resources, and just some thoughts. Don't quote me on this, but some of the thoughts on the water resource side, we're looking to these national water models that would be best suited, that everyone could leverage, right? So anyway, definitely in the future on the water resource side. So, what does this really mean, though, to water? I mean, what will I have if I am a potable water distribution company? You know, what do I get? Well, I think, in my opinion, you know, this is definitely, you've heard us talk about any device, anytime, anywhere, but this will really start to bring that full platform functionality, you know, for network features. And again, you know, it's going to be rolling out in phases, just like any new feature. You know, it will evolve over time. But this really is one of those things where if you wanted to do network tracing in the field, you know, you had to have basically client-server activities. We couldn't do a geometric trace in the field on a lightweight device. You had to have server functionality back and forth. And so this really gives us, you know, that capability going into the future. Introducing also kind of this non-coincident connectivity. You'll be able to connect things that they'll be able to participate. And really, this kind of gets us into, I immediately was drawn to like master meters for apartment complexes. You can have all the individual meters, but you may have a master meter, and you know, for folks doing service points and things, and even like, you know, inlets that may or may not, with the stormwater folks, you know, some of these inlets, we just have point features right now, but I think there's a pipe, I'm not sure, but we can start doing connectivity with these disconnected features, if you will, and then, you know, and add attachments that can participate. Immediately thinking of like thrust blocks on forced mains, and you know, whether I have rain guards on manholes or not, and you know, so what does that mean for superficial runoff if I'm doing modeling at that micro scale and all sorts of things. And then to me, one of the most exciting things too, definitely, you know, containment. So these assemblies that we have in our feature classes, so you know, pressure regulating valves, you know, basically our valve pits, and of course wastewater lift stations, and even as we go into plant, I have this concept of containment, the things that belong within other things. Well, I see great, you know, functionality coming forward with that. And you know, this what I would call parametric tracing, or this parameter-based tracing, we'll be able to do tracing rather than from just simply sources and sinks. You'll actually be able to add some additional intelligence. So, you know, for vitreous clay pipe, you know, for the folks that are doing, you know, basically root saws, and or you have, you know, some of the new hydro jets with like lumberjacks, that you really don't want to use those same equipment, say, on PVC pipe. You know, you'll be able to build certain cleaning algorithms there, or simply, obviously, you know, the cathodic protection, and, you know, different ways to actually trace the network beyond just this connectivity model. And you'll have, not only have we been doing, you know, username, date stamps for the longest time, you know, what's going to be kind of built-in standard issue is this lifecycle management. You know, is this a prelim pipe? Is it you know, an active pipe? Is an abandoned pipe? That concept of that lifecycle management is built into the models as well. So it really sets the stage, you know, for you to almost go into, you know, say this operational view of your network, and trace on all sorts of different operational parameters above and beyond just you know, geometric connectivity. So I see this as a great thing that's going to evolve over time. We definitely, you know, have this developed. You know, it was the energy, the electric and gas folks, especially the electric folks, that were really pushing for this, and you know, there's all of us together with electric, gas, water, and wastewater, and so we're all evolving our models, and it really is going to, I think, make a big difference. But anyway, I will kind of stop going on and on about that, because you're probably really interested in seeing what does this thing look like, and we've got some of our experts online to talk about it. So I think we're going to start off with a quick polling question, but I'm going to turn it over to Mike Miller. Mike, take it away.
Thanks, David. We're going to go ahead and launch the polling question before Mike gets started. So if you guys could quickly answer, how aware are you of the utility network? Please select 1, not at all, slightly aware, moderately aware, very aware, extremely aware. You've been following this for a while. It just takes a second. How aware are you of the utility network? Just need a few more votes coming in. So it looks like about 33% are slightly aware. We've got a similar percentage for moderately aware. 13% of you are reporting that you're not aware of the utility network, and 7% of you are extremely aware. So it sounds like there's this portion of you that's been following along. Thank you for answering the poll. We're going to go ahead and close that poll, and we're going to let Mike get started. Mike?
Thanks, Krista. So we'll be going through some of the high-level concepts of the utility network, have a demonstration with Andrew showing some of the capabilities, as well as dive into the data model and how we'll be delivering that. Now, the beta is upcoming, so the things, just a warning that things that we present in here may change by the time we get to release, but a lot of the concepts you'll see in here will not. So we're going to go through some of the high-level overview. You could dive into the fundamentals of water and the industry data models, look at timelines, and then discuss some next steps and have some time to answer your questions. So if this is the first time you're hearing about the new utility network, the network management project was put together to solve a number of key challenges or key enhancements. One of the main areas is providing cross-platform support. With the geometric network like we have today, we use ArcMap as our primary tool for editing, and not just a geometric network, but our geodatabase and some of the advanced capabilities for managing that. The utility network is built around the concept of allowing you to analyze and work with the network regardless of the application. Yes, Pro will be our first client to utilize it, but as the utility network project evolves, you'll be able to start managing, maintaining, and editing data through the web browser, through mobile apps, as well as desktop applications like ArcGIS Pro. And because the reason behind this is a new service-based architecture. Your interaction with the utility network is strictly through feature services. We can talk about this a little bit more. The capabilities of the network, not just managing the data, but the capabilities of the network such as tracing and analytics will also be available across the platform. So it's not just exposing the editing to a larger number of clients. It's also exposing the capabilities, such as like an isolation trace or an upstream or downstream trace. Those analytics and those analytics and those capabilities are native to the utility network and are provided through the services architecture. Other things that are in progress that aren't isolated to the utility network, but capabilities such as the attribute rules. So if you use the attribute assistant today or similar functionality, ArcGIS is going to be enhanced to have that capability in the geodatabase. So that's going to allow you to utilize these attribute rules in the web as well as your desktop applications. Now, one of the things, one of the big changes is that the utility network is going to take advantage of a new optimized model and to store and access your data. So it's a simplified model. If you're using the simplified model with a set of predefined feature classes. And we're going to dive into this. But the use and interaction of those features or of those layers is all going to be through the services, through the web map and the feature layers. So when we look at the layers that we have access to, the way you administrate or you store them into the actual enterprise geodatabase is not going to be the way your users are going to interact with them, because the web map and the feature layers allow us to provide different layers to build the map products we require. Now, as an administrator, you'll still be able to connect to the database and perform your tasks as an administrator, such as adding fields or manipulating or changing the settings of the utility network. But all the interactions, such as editing, analysis, viewing, will be through the feature services and the layers you publish on top of them. So with that, I'm going to have Andrew actually show you a quick demonstration of the utility network and some of the capabilities that you can do in Pro today. Andrew?
Thanks, Mike. Let me share my screen here, and hopefully everybody can see that I have ArcGIS Pro here. And as Mike hinted at just a few minutes ago, the way that information is served to end users these days is different than it used to be previously. That information comes in the form of services, whether they be map services, feature services, and then they're essentially wrapped into the idea of a web map. And then, of course, I can take that web map and I can consume it in any Esri application that I need to do the job that I want to do. And that's what I've done here. I've brought a web map with data at the heart of it into ArcGIS Pro. And so now I can benefit from all of the capabilities that Pro brings along with it. And I'm not just talking about faster performance because it's 64-bit or multi-threaded, but I can have a true desktop experience and create new content or new features regardless of where that information has to go back to. So you can see there that Pro is pushing that information back to wherever it lives. It might be being served to me through Portal, it might be being served to me through online. In a way, Pro doesn't even really care where that information is. So I can take advantage of other capabilities here, and I can use edit templates to help me create rich data that is attributed accordingly. So you can see here I just created a new lateral, and if I show you information behind that lateral, then we can see that the template added that its size is 1 inch, that its material type is copper, that this thing is in service, and it's a residential lateral line. And of course I can also take advantage of other desktop functionality, things like snapping. So I can create good quality information. Now, of course, you may be asking yourself, why are we talking about editing inside Pro when we're really here to learn more about the utility network? But like Mike said, the first place where you're essentially going to interact with the utilities network is inside Pro. And you can see that I have one over here inside of my Pro session. And if I highlight that in my table of contents, then of course Pro brings the appropriate utilities network tool set to the front so that I have access to everything that I need. And if I turn on those layers in my map, then you can see that those tools were actually working in the background all the time there. They were monitoring those new assets that I created because those feature services participate inside of my utilities network here. So the first thing that I have to do is validate my information. I have to make sure that it's topologically correct. So this is a capability that was in other parts of, say, ArcMap before, Data Reviewer, for example. Here it's just native to ArcGIS Pro. And you can see that I've validated those things. Everything is connected, everything is snapped, which allows me to now do some kind of tracing. So if I add a flag to that new meter that I created there, and if I ask Pro to do me a network trace to see what else is connected, we can see that this is done through a geoprocessing tool. And again, this geoprocessing tool is really just looking at the web map at the heart of this here. It doesn't necessarily have to go back to where the source data is. So you can see that I can't get very far. I can't get past my lateral out onto the main. And the reason for this is because unlike simple topology checks or connectivity that David hinted at the very beginning, with a utilities network we can get much more complex, we can get much more fine-grained, and what we can do is we can specify rules. And rules might be more complex than just saying a line can only connect to another line with a point in between. What we can actually do with rules at the utility network is we can specify individual asset types so that a lateral can only connect to a main with a fitting in between it. And then we can even dig further beyond that, and we can actually dig down into the specific attributes of each of those features. So we could say that a 1-inch copper lateral can only connect to a 12-inch ductile iron main with a very specific fitting type in between the two of them. And so if I go here and I add my fitting in between the two, of course I have to validate to make sure that they're connected. But now I've hopefully satisfied the rule set that I have built into this geometric network we see right here. So now if I do a trace, I should be in compliance with all of those rules. And you can see that now I can get beyond the lateral, I can go through that fitting, I can connect to the main, and I can reach the wider network. So the final thing that I want to show you is that I don't want to have to build each of these features individually, just like you saw me do there. The edit templates are useful. They help me populate each individual new asset with the information that the rules require. So for example, a lateral isn't just a lateral, but it's a 1-inch copper residential lateral. But I don't want to have to build these things individually. I want to be able to replicate some of the functionality that we've seen available through solutions that plug into ArcMap. And again, that's functionality that is just native inside of ArcGIS Pro. So here I have what's called a group template. And a group template is exactly as it sounds. I have a group of different assets together, which I can sort of pre-populate with attribute information behind each one, but are essentially going to create me a whole little asset set here. So I have my lateral. You can see that this is 1 inch, it's copper, it's residential. I have that all-important fitting as part of this, which my rules of my network require for connectivity purposes. And I have a cutoff valve or a curb stop, and I have a water meter in there too. So what this allows me to do is to very quickly just create something like we made a few minutes ago, but with just a couple of simple clicks. And you can see what I've built here. I've built fittings. I've built that service connection or that water meter. I have my curb stop or my shutoff valve, and of course I have the lateral in here. And you can see that the lateral is populated with the information we asked it to be, the size and the material type, etc., etc. And you can see that this information is also connected topologically, like we said earlier on. So if I grab this fitting right here, and if I move it around slightly, you can see that this stuff is all connected, just like it was in a geometric network now. So if I validate my information once again, clean that up, and then of course I run my connected trace again, all of those new features that we created with just a few simple clicks using the edit templates and the group templates satisfy the rules and participate inside of my utilities network. So this idea of rules allows us to get very fine-grained and create much more sophisticated tracing capabilities than the simple connectivity that I just showed you here. For example, we could include one-way valves that are passive on the upstream trace, but stop flow on a downstream trace. And all of these rules are really a function of the data model that underlies the utility network. And to talk about the data model, I'm going to hand this back to Mike.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. So hopefully you got a little taste of what the utility network is going to provide. You have a lot of the capabilities that you're used to today, but we'll start adding, even provide some more functionality in an even a better experience. But just kind of to go back to that point, what you're seeing there is as Andrew was being a user, just like a user of the network, taking advantage of ArcGIS Enterprise, interacting with the utility network through services and using one of the applications, which happen to be Pro. These capabilities, as I mentioned, will be available eventually throughout the entire stack. Now, to realize the benefits of the utility network, these are things you start thinking of. If you want to take advantage of the beta or start participating in the beta and start getting familiar with the utility network, there's a couple of requirements that we encourage you to start setting up. So if you're not already an ArcGIS Enterprise user, or you're not utilizing the capabilities such as Portal for ArcGIS and ArcGIS Server, these are the capabilities you'll need to take advantage of the utility network. Just to note, the utility network is not currently supported in a file geodatabase, and because of that the service-based model, you're interacting strictly through feature services requiring that enterprise geodatabase on the back end. So with that, Krista, we have one more poll question I'd like to show.
Yep, we're going to go ahead and launch the next poll. Is your organization currently using ArcGIS Pro? Yes or no? This one should be pretty easy. Give you guys a few seconds. Looks like the votes are coming in. Is your organization currently using ArcGIS Pro? So it looks like we have about 35% of the audience saying yes, they are using Pro. A few more votes are still coming in, so we'll just give this another second. About 65% are saying no, we are not using Pro. All right, well, thank you guys for answering the poll. Mike, back to you.
Great. All right, so with that, let's dive into a little bit of the fundamentals of the utility network. We're not going to be able to cover all the different concepts and all the different capabilities in today's webcast, But we want to set the foundation for some of the key elements, and these are things you can we'll be able to learn upon throughout the year, and as you start utilizing the beta. One is kind of the composition of the utility network. When we think about how we model networks today, we model them all as a complete system. The utility network allows us to start breaking these networks out in a series of different domains. So you think about that, the utility network lets us model one or more domains inside of the utility network. The easiest way to think about a domain is your water domain, your sewer domain, your stormwater domain, or your electric domain. Is essentially all the features required to deliver or collect a resource. Inside of those domains, we can also model different subsystems. So in our picture in the bottom, you can see we have a potable water domain. And in there we have our system tier. That system could be the treated production, the treated distribution, or even the untreated or raw collection side. Inside of each of those systems, we can model different subsystems, such as a pressure zone, or an isolation zone, or a DMA. And inside of each of those zones, we can have even smaller zones. So it allows us this hierarchical system to model and model the different zones inside of a different domain. As I mentioned, you can have one or more domains. Those domains can live side by side. And if you want those domains to connect to each other, you can take advantage of the structured network. The structured network has a couple purposes. One is the structured network is designed to model the features that support the domain. The easiest way to think about this is thinking about an electric domain, where you have a power pole or a utility pole that's supporting a transformer or the wire. The pole itself is a structure, doesn't pass any current through it, but it supports all the devices that actually do pass the current through it. In water, we can look at, say, a pipe casing, where a pipe casing actually doesn't have any flow in it, but actually supports the pipe. And that's where how we can take advantage of these structured networks. The other key area of the structured network is it allows us to cross, that is a connection point between our different domain networks. So if we're modeling a sewer system and a storm system, and we have a combined sewer and storm system in certain parts of the city, we can actually use that structured network to go and trace between those different domains. So in times of a rain event, if we need to figure out the path of our CSO path, we can actually trace between those systems. Now when we look at the structured network, this is the way we're representing or storing features in the geodatabase. Remember earlier, the way we store data in the database is not going to be the way we interact with it. So don't let this deter you from thinking about how to take advantage of it. The structure network, we will provide 3 different feature classes to allow us to model those structures. They're a line, a point, and a polygon, a boundary layer. And inside of here, we can represent all the different features that make up our structured network. When we look at a domain network, we're modeling our features into 5 different feature classes. This would be our devices. Those devices are the things that actually operate the flow or affect the commodity on the network, such as valves and hydrants and meters. The lines are the linear features, and the easiest is our pipes and laterals and open channels in our sewer and storms and water systems. The junctions are the things that provide connectivity between lines, such as this may be a fitting. Assemblies are those complex features that David mentioned earlier, such as we want to model what a PRV really is, or a backflow preventer. It's a collection of devices. We can now model that there's a single location, and in that single location, we can open it up and see all the different elements that that compose that device. And then there's a subnet line. This is a system maintained line that is an aggregation based on your tier. So as I said earlier, you have a pressure zone. Well, the subnet line will actually see it will actually represent all the features that make up that pressure zone, or in an isolation zone, all the features that make it up. So by you controlling and setting the appropriate values, the system is going to maintain these different zones for you. Now, if we look at the feature classes and how we can start modeling our utility data in these set of predefined classes, there's a certain set of fields that are key, and these are your asset group and asset type fields. You can add any additional fields you want to this. You can add any additional fields you want, but this is going to allow you to model and represent all your different devices and assets. So if we look at the asset group and asset type attributes in these fields, these are really key important fields, important concepts to understand. Not only do we let us to model the feature classes and all the different devices, they also let us define all the different properties of the utility network. So the asset group field, this is simply, think of it as like a subtype field in today's feature classes, but this is where you would actually map and represent all the kind of layers you have in your existing network. The asset type then is a unique discriminator or a unique field or a set of values per asset group, which will let you model another level of classification of those different devices or assets and defining the asset group. So let's just kind of look at this. So if we look at in our water device layer, we may have what you see here on the left side in the devices. These are all the different devices we have in the water system. And this is very close to the list we have on our baseline data model. And if you look at, for instance, if we actually look at the asset groups for pressure valve, you see they're divided in different types. And these different types, such as a pressure valve that is pressure reducing, that asset group, asset type, will allow me to specify additional utility network properties on it, such as it may be a source. It's the starting point of a pressure zone. Another way to look at it is this is the actual properties table that we provided in the utility network. If we expand a device, you can see on the left-hand side all those different asset groups. You can see the different asset types. So for controllable valves, that they're type of, say, commercial or residential. Or if we're looking at a flow valve that's check valve, we can see it's defined as a category and it has a dual terminal configuration. These are additional properties you can specify on these different assets by these two fields. Now, what are these properties you can define? There's some very important ones, such as terminals. Terminals allow you to provide connection points to a device. So you don't just connect a line. You don't have to just connect a line to a point. You actually can connect a line to a point at a particular terminal. You know, I think check valves are the easiest one to think about. We've always struggled to model. What side of a check valve is the upstream, and what side of the check valve is the downstream? So when we're drawing that water main and we snap it to a check valve, we can actually specify it's on the A or B, or the upstream or downstream side. And as Andrew mentioned, and that device can then be honored as part of tracing to know which way flow can go through it. You know, a more complex terminal you're seeing here on the right is like a diverter valve, where we can model where the pipes connect, but we also can model the valve configuration. That A is connected to B, C is connected to D, or D is connected to A, and you can model these different configurations in these multiple terminal devices. There's also categories we can define, and these categories allow us, you showed earlier, such as protective. So that knows that that device is a one-way or something we want to trace to all our protected devices. These categories help us identify and search and be able to affect our different tracing capabilities. Network attributes are another capability, and this is defined on a particular field in a feature class. This allows us to uniquely index and monitor or use a value on a field. I think the easiest way I think about this is if you're utilizing our existing isolation trace solution in our water utility network toolbar add-in, you have to go into the configuration file. You have to specify the feature class name for your valves. You have to specify the field name of which field is operable, and you have to put in the values of 0 or 1 to determine which is a operable valve versus non-operable valve. The network attribute allows you to specify this at the utility network level, where you can pick a particular field such as operable, and you can define its type, such as it's a 0 1, it's a domain, it's a boolean, yes, like open or true or false, or open or close. And when you build your traces, your networks, you can utilize them to help you to identify, say, stop it at my closed valves or stop at all my non-operable valves. Lastly, as Andrew really kind of showed earlier, was the connectivity and rules. So we can be very discrete in how we model the connection of our network. We can model items such as a feature can only connect to another feature. A line can connect to a cap. A pressurized main connect to a fitting of type cap. Or a pressurized main can connect to a lateral through a corporation stop or through a tap or T. You also need to define what features have attachments or which features can contain other features. So this idea of containment, where I can say that this complex assembly, this complex valve has many features in it, you can actually define that. But you also can do that with items such as a pump station. I can say that this pump station area, polygon boundary, can contain all these different assets. Now I'm looking at my data, I might only see the boundary, and then I could go choose to actually show which assets are actually inside of there. Lastly, as we kind of touched a little bit on tiers and subnetworks, we're going into how we set them up. These allow you to model kind of sub-portions or subsystems inside of your network. And these are defined by categories and the terminals, And it really shows that a lot of these different pieces all come together to help you define some of the different subzones in your network. So this is kind of a quick tour through the properties and some of the capabilities of the utility network, but hopefully it helps getting you start thinking about why these asset group and these asset type fields are very important. And when we're setting up our data, these are going to be these two characteristics, these two fields, these two values are what we use to actually define all the characteristics and control the functionality of our network. Now, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to, it's a big change from how we currently model data. And to get you started with that, Esri's building a set of baseline models to get you jump started, just like we do with today's industry models. Now, we're going to provide configurations for a number of key areas. And what we're going to start hearing is the term of asset package, and I'll explain to you what this is. Well, we provide models for water, wastewater, stormwater, electric, and gas. Now, the initial beta is going to provide water, electric, and gas, and we'll be working on stormwater and wastewater throughout the year. Now, we're delivering those data models in what we call an asset package. This isn't just a geodatabase that you can copy and paste into your utility network. This asset package provides a schema for all those asset groups and asset types. That's the baseline set of fields you can start with, but it also provides all the different characteristics and capabilities, such as, what are the terminals in my system? What are the categories? How are they assigned to our fields? What are the tiers and subnetworks, and how do we set them up? So these are providing a jumpstart or the starting place for how you'd model your water, sewer, storm, electric, and gas data in the utility network. Now, we're providing them as a file geodatabase. So this asset package is nothing new to you. It's just a file geodatabase with a known schema or predefined schema with all these different capabilities or all these things set up for a particular industry. So if you want to kind of peruse it, look at it before you actually set it up, you can go ahead and just try to break apart its components. The other nice thing is we allow you to model, to create a utility network, not just from one asset package, but from any number. So you could take our baseline asset package, you could generate your own with additional fields, additional capabilities, additional asset groups, and then our tools will allow you to combine them into a single utility network. There's a lot of number of reasons why you have this. It could be partners providing an add-on to our baseline. They can provide that as an asset package. You model the gaps. You start doing a gap analysis between what the baseline provides and what you have in your current system, such as you may have a field to integrate with a work order system. Definitely add that yourself, but we really encourage you to build that as an asset package. So now you have a history and you can recreate your data model anytime. So as I mentioned, these encapsulate all the capabilities of the utility network, the asset groups, those asset types, all the rules, the tiers, associations, the connectivity, all the things, all the capabilities, excuse me, all the capabilities required to set that up. So just a high-level view of how it's going to work is when you get access to the beta and you start working with it, you're going to create a new utility network. Our tools allow you to take those asset packages, apply them to your utility network, optionally load sample data. So if you want to play with our Naperville sample data, we'll be provided, we can load that in there, and then you can output as a utility network. You can start editing just like Andrew was showing you earlier today. So just get kind of end, and we'll open it up for some questions here in a minute. Just in the timeline, you will see a beta 1 come out very shortly, within the next couple weeks or two. There'll be a beta available for you, and it'll be you'll have to sign up to an early adopter or early adopter pages, but this will give you access to the water, electric, and gas data models. So it'll give you access to the utility network and a lot of its capabilities, as well as the tools to lay down and kind of start manipulating and extending the utility network data model. You'll see throughout the year another beta will be coming out that'll have additional capabilities such as the attribute rules. These won't be in the beta 1, and these attribute rules provide a lot of attribute assistant-like functionality. And then closer to the end of the year, you'll see a final release of the software that will provide all the water, or will, in addition to what you provide in beta, will have the sewer and stormwater data models. So some next steps, a couple things that I would definitely start getting familiar with Pro. Start using Pro and see how you can utilize that even in your current environment. But get involved with the beta. I mean, the data model we've developed, we've tried to take a lot of the feedback we've heard over the years and incorporate that in there. Model some of the additional devices and the complexity, and take advantage of the new system to model the stuff that we've always struggled with in our existing database. So when we're at this point, we really need your feedback. Have the way we organize data. Do we need to add additional fields to that? We're at a point where we can definitely still easily manipulate and hone the model to make sure that at release it has all the capabilities you guys need to get up and running with the utility network. So we definitely want to get your feedback on that. And you can see the link there for the early adopter site. Jot that down, sign up, and again, start working with the utility network. The other thing is you want to start thinking about is looking at identifying some of the areas you might want to put a process to improve your existing data. Utility networks going to allow us to model more things. Maybe these are items you can start capturing today in your existing database. So as you make the transition, these things are already and we're all ready to be loaded into the utility network, and you can be even a step up. So I want to thank you guys for coming. Hopefully you found this educational and valuable. This isn't the last one of these that we'll be doing. We can definitely, as throughout the year, we can be providing more up-to-date information and giving you, we can dive into deeper. But this is hopefully a good start and a good high-level overview of what the utility network can provide you. Give you some of the quick view into the underlying or kind of behind the curtains of the capabilities of the network. So Krista, have we got any questions coming?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, we have a lot of questions. Don't worry. I'd like to start with a question, or multiple questions really. We've had several of the audience submit questions about how the utility network is used in reference to Portal and ArcGIS Online. I know you mentioned that briefly in your presentation, but there seems to be some confusion about what's required and how it interacts with ArcGIS Online versus Portal or Portal.
Okay, is a really good question. So the utility network, as I mentioned, is services only. So when you create the utility network, your first step after setting up your database is to publish a set of services. Those services for the first release will require Portal and ArcGIS, the ArcGIS server component of Portal. They're not going to be supported. Those services cannot be published in ArcGIS Online. But once you create those services through your ArcGIS server and your Portal environment, you now have access to them through any application. So just like you would today in a hybrid model, if you publish something in ArcGIS server, you can register that or utilize that in an ArcGIS Online application. ArcGIS Online is not the hosting environment for the services, and that same is going to be true with the utility network. Now, at the first release, the utility network will have the access to the data will be through feature services just like you have today. But the advanced capabilities such as tracing and some of the other capabilities the utility network is going to provide will have REST services or REST endpoints. But the ArcGIS Online, the JavaScript API, the runtime SDKs will take time for those things to become native into those frameworks. So it's going to be an evolution. As the utility network is released, Pro will be the first client that knows how to interact with those service endpoints. But eventually, all the different apps and SDKs will also be able to interact with those endpoints. So hopefully that answers your question, that you can definitely still view the data through a web app, and it's an ArcGIS Online. It's just ArcGIS Portal, or Portal for ArcGIS, and ArcGIS Enterprise are the publication environment for that.
Thanks, Mike. We've also received several questions about how the utility network is going to work with CMMS applications. So something like a CityWorks or even Oracle. Is there something you can talk about in reference to that?
I mean, I don't really have a definite answer how they interact. I mean, the interaction with the utility network is through feature services. So if your current integration is through kind of a client server database connection, there will probably have to be looking at how that could be updated or expanded to utilize the feature services. I mean, at the end of the day, your features you're storing, there are features in a geodatabase. So I think the interaction could be very similar, just without the details of how the communication or how the different systems are integrated. It's really hard to answer. But it's definitely something we should probably we encourage you to reach out to your vendor and determine how we can best get these two systems communicating.
Well, and Krista, I've got some thoughts on that. Just as we've been seeing the utility network evolve, Mike was able to cover a critical component is these asset groups and asset types. I mean, when we have conversations and when I was at Colorado Springs Utilities, it was always a struggle as, having a CMMS or enterprise asset management system and the GIS, basically the asset classes, asset hierarchies, how they would go hand in hand, especially if you start then bringing in also your financial general ledger, just the buckets that were there. And so what I see happening here, though, is the utility network with its asset groups and asset types will allow you to better model your asset registry. And really that's half that battle. And so once you get, your asset registry working from a model perspective within the utility network, that will really help set the stage for then working with any CMMS vendor of choice. Now, yes, as Mike says, the interface will be through feature services, not traditional, database calls. We're really extending that piece, but just the process of walking through building your asset registry within the utility network, you will overcome lots of hurdles there in getting those things worked through, because you're going to use it in an operational fashion. And so I think you'll really set yourself up well for any CMMS vendor just by going through that process of making a very competent, very usable, very operational perspective asset registry.
Thanks, David. Mike, I know you discussed this a little bit during your presentation, but we have a lot of questions about the attribute assistant and how that's being used now. Can you just maybe summarize how that capability is going to be made available with the new utility network?
Sure, I'll cover both of the add-ins now. So if you're utilizing our current water utility editing and analysis solution, you're probably familiar with the water network editing tools and the attribute assistant. So both of those so the water network editing tools, we're currently not looking at rebuilding that for ArcGIS Pro, because a lot of these capabilities in there are not required or part of ArcGIS Pro, or part of the editing stack we have that ArcGIS Pro provides, like the group template that Andrew showed with drawing in the tap, the lateral, the valve, and the service connection. So, as we get closer to release, we can definitely reevaluate the gaps that we're providing in the utility network and ArcGIS Pro, and look at if there's anything we need to fill. But currently, that is not under plans to be upgraded. And the same goes true for the attribute assistant. I mentioned earlier the attribute assistant is an ArcMap editor extension and works inside of ArcMap. In ArcGIS Pro, or with utility network, editing is not constrained to the desktop anymore. So building an add-in for Pro is really, we really need that capability of the attribute assistant to be available not just in Pro, but across the stack, such as Collector, web applications, as well as in ArcGIS Pro. And the dev team currently under development is a project called Attribute Rules, which will be available not with the beta 1 coming out in a few weeks, but in the beta 2. And that's going to provide attribute assistant-like functionality. Is it going to have all the rules the attribute assistant provides you? The answer is no. So we'll have to, we'll definitely look at what the gap is or what you require and the rules you have today, and what is going to be provided with the attribute assistant. So if you're an attribute assistant user, we have a good GeoNet blog out there where a lot of people contribute their rules. Feel free to go out there and also put up your rules so we can have a nice keep building that list of how everybody's using it today, and and that would help us understand what are those capabilities we need to provide with the attribute rules that's up and coming in ArcGIS.
Thanks, Mike. We also had several questions about moving from the geometric network to the utility network. Are there going to be support tools or documentation that help you make that transition?
Good question. So in the beta 1, we're not providing any tools that assist with the data migration. You can definitely, it's just feature classes at the end of the day. You can use geoprocessing and map your data over. You could take advantage of partner solutions like Data Interop or FME Safe Software, Workbench to do data migration, as well as we have a great partner community that's already out there helping you migrate your data from the geometric network into the utility network. One of the areas we are looking at providing is an enhancement to the Data Assistant Pro add-in. This is currently out there and as part of our community parcels and community address solution. You can use it today. And this is actually what we're using internally to map our existing geometric network data into the utility network. But we're working on some enhancements to make that even better and take advantage and some new capabilities to assist with moving our data from the from the GN to the UN. So yes, we at the beta 2 we'll probably look at providing that an update to that tool. But today you'll just if you download the beta 1, we'll have the data all ready for you. That'll load in there. And if you there's definitely different paths for migrating your data into the utility network.
Great. We also had several questions about disconnected. Will this affect how our customers are able to work in a disconnected environment?
No, this should only enhance how you can work in a disconnected environment because the new optimized storage model, being able to pull your data offline will become even more efficient. This is the way that, and there's some new layer types coming to ArcGIS that will optimize the way you interact with it. So yes, I mean, being disconnected is one of those capabilities from the beginning that has been is a requirement. So not just disconnecting, editing your data, but all those capabilities will go offline with you. So if you're offline and say an Explorer app and you're out using your water and utility network, the ability to trace it and ability to do some of those analytics is on the plan to be provided to you offline.
Okay, we also had several questions about ArcGIS Enterprise and the licensing and the technology stack that's required. I think some of that terminology might be a little new to our customers. Can you just go over what enterprise means and what the technology stack is going to need to be in order for them to implement this?
Sure. At 10.5, the ArcGIS software went through kind of a renaming, and ArcGIS Enterprise is a term that covers ArcGIS Server, Portal for ArcGIS, and a lot of the other capabilities that go into ArcGIS Server. So ArcGIS Enterprise is the standard, is the software you would install on your environment, be like before you would install Portal and then install Server. So ArcGIS Enterprise is really that same software you're familiar with. It's just under a new kind of moniker, and there's some other key changes in there. David, do you have any comments on that?
Oh, it would help to unmute. No, I mean that's pretty well covered because I think there's actually a couple more questions that as we're wrapping up and just some final thoughts on some of the asset registries. That last question really got me thinking on some other components.
Okay, so maybe we can spend...
Krista, next question.
Right, we can spend some more time on that maybe in our update at the Water UC meeting. Okay, so another question came in about Z-values and how we are going to manage 3D in the new utility network and in ArcGIS Pro.
Yeah, it's, and part of the utility network is data is automatically Z-aware. How we visualize and interact with that in the 3D space, I don't have experience with, so I can't answer that, but the data is by default Z and M aware. So can't give you a definite answer, something we can find out and follow up and get more details on at a later date.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So we also had some questions about hosted feature layer views and what technicians can see or not see based on views and editing. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, as I mentioned, ArcGIS Align is the ArcGIS Align currently is where we support views of data. The portal technology does not take advantage of that yet. So as that capability is being evolved and applied to Portal, these are just feature services. That same capability should be able to be applied to provide different views of that data to restrict or control access.
Okay. There are also several questions about the file geodatabase and concerns about versioning. Okay.
Well, I mean, file geodatabase will cover first. As I mentioned, it's not supported with the utility network. So simple one there. With versioning, there is a new versioning model. To be honest, I'm not the expert on the new versioning model that's being incorporated. So it'd be something we have to follow up and get better answers for you on how the new versioning model works within the utility network.
Thank you. We also had several questions asking about hydraulic modeling and how this new network might impact the use of hydraulic modeling software. Have you had any experience there?
No, it's a very good question, and it's something area we need to work with our partners to ensure that they can, perform their models on top of this new data structure. I mean, It is a new data design or new data structure, the utility network and the capabilities, but the underlying features are just simple features. So it's we don't have a concrete answer, but it's something we need to ensure that our partners have their software, be able to port it over to take advantage of doing the analysis on top of these on top of the utility network feature classes.
Yeah, and Krista, I guess a comment on the modeling, and we see that in some other regards, but as we get into all of the the H&H side of things, even like we've tried to be very careful with our current even flood management solutions. We have all these information products that we do what we do well, and we kind of let the user have the science of their choice to do whatever modeling they want to do to get us to, let's say, a flood inundation polygon. So, there are expert systems in the field that do the modeling side that we just take the results of that. And I see that same thing happening somewhat with the utility network, as Mike just said. There's still features behind the scenes. A lot of the services piece is the interaction with the model for editing and that. For hydraulic modeling, typically we do an extraction of the asset infrastructure and connectivity that's guaranteed through our rules. Then when they start to run linear regression and other calculations, they're doing that in their model space anyway, and then coming back. So yeah, there will be, as Mike says, we'll be working with the partners, but I see a still a traditional thread carrying over into the new utility network, but definitely something that we'll probably even be able to do a webinar on when the time comes to as we evolve and get to that point.
Thanks, David. So going back to the software required for the utility network, there are several questions about the software and the versions of the software. So Mike, you mentioned ArcGIS 10.5. This is required to run the utility network, correct?
Yeah, I just went back to the timeline shot. Am I not sharing my? Oh, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, Krista.
That's all right. I'll go ahead and let you share.
Yeah, so if you look at the timeline, what you'll see is that beta 1. The beta 1 is going to be based on 10.5 and Pro 1.4. So these will be overlays or extensions essentially you would add, or a service pack or install you would set on top of these. So for the beta 1, you'll need 10.5 and Pro 1.4.1 or 1.4.1, I believe. For the second beta, this will be based around 10.5.1 and Pro 2.0. And then going forward with the first release, you'll see it would be 10.6 and Pro 2.1. So hopefully this answers that. These will be the versions required for you to take advantage of the utility network throughout the beta and the release schedule.
Thanks, Mike. I think we have time for one more question. We had a couple questions from our current ArcGIS Pro users about the symbology. So I know Andrew, in his demo, we saw some of the symbology there. Is there standard symbology built into the utility network, or is this something that's in ArcGIS Pro?
We're still really hashing all that out, but the standard symbology won't be built into the utility network, but we'll be providing that symbology with our data models. Just like the data models aren't built into the utility network, but we're providing them as part of the utility network. You'll have these different industry configurations, and you can select one of them. So we also have maps, and it's an area that we're still finalizing how to best provide them. But yes, there will be some standard symbology included, symbology and maps included with those data models.
Great. Well, I think that's about all the time we have. Thank you for joining us today. As I mentioned earlier, we will create a Q&A document that will be posted online. I know a lot of you submitted questions that we didn't get to, so please keep an eye out for that. Also, please join the water team at the user conference for our Sunday Esri Water meeting.
Hey, Krista, can I add? I just got, Larry Young happened to send me an email just to follow up one thing. So he did say that single-use geodatabases will be supported at a later date. So the kind of question of can we use this in kind of a file geodatabase, but there will be a concept of single-use geodatabase will be used at a later date. And then for the 3D space, he did say that there will be connectivity at the X, Y, and Z level. So you can actually define connectivity not just by do they overlap, but do they overlap at the X, Y, and Z space. So thanks, Larry, for giving me those updates.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. And Larry's going to be joining us at our Water UC meeting and presenting on the utility network as well. So we do have other resources coming up at our UC, so you can find out more. And as David mentioned, we're going to hopefully bring you some additional webinars that will keep you up to date on what's going on with the utility network. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have a great evening or afternoon, depending on where you joined us from.